Good evening. Welcome to Living Arts. I'm your host, Jackie Suarez. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight, we're going to be talking to Andrea Elam of Synapses Dance Ensemble. She's a Peekskill native. I'm so glad to have her here. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
So, you are a very busy young lady.
Yes. Yes, I am very busy.
I've seen you perform a few different places around town, and just awe-inspiring is the words that come to mind. You're a terrific dancer, and I know that you're very active in the community. So why don't you give our audience just a little background on how you started to dance? I know that you're from Beacon, right?
Yes, I'm from Beacon. I grew up in Beacon. We moved there when I was 2 years old from Vermont, and it was really your typical childhood kind of thing where my best friend who lived next door was taking ballet. So, of course, I had to take ballet. And then, as fate would have it, she moved on to being a total tomboy and doing sports, and I just totally stuck with the dance. So, you know, it went from being 1 class a week to being 7 classes a week, and then point, and then variations, and I ended up by the time I was, I'd say like 13, 14, I was dancing 6 days a week, 3 or 4 hours a day.
Wow.
And I don't think I've ever stopped.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
So I know that you went to University of Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, I went there for just a year
Okay.
As a dance major, and about a year into it, my dance teacher from Beacon, who had pretty much raised me, told me that if I really wanted to dance professionally, I really needed to be in New York. And when I was 19, I just packed up and moved down to the city and found a place to live, found a job in a health club. It was really hysterical. This was back when it was called Elaine Powers.
Elaine Powers.
Yeah, it was a chain. It's now Living Well Lady.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I was teaching like aerobics classes for minimum wage.
Okay.
To make ends meet, and auditioning and doing the whole New York starving artist kind of thing.
Okay.
And
so then you wound up going to Hunter College.
Yeah. I was so fortunate. Within my first couple years in the city, I actually got a job with this crazy group of South Americans. I was touring with this folkloric ballet company for 3 years. They were from Argentina. And it was just so wonderful. But at a certain point, you know, during my downtime, because the tours would be like 40 weeks, 40 states in 40 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And then you'd have this little bit of a hiatus, and I started feeling like, well, all right, this is a really tough way to make a living, and, you know, what if eventually I can't do this anymore? I should have a plan B. So I ended up going back to Hunter College, and I got a dual degree. So I got a degree in clinical nutrition and dance.
Oh, wow. So look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happened at that point? Did you continue to dance with a few companies in the city, or?
Yeah, I sort of, again, did dual career tracks. I worked in health and fitness and wellness and nutrition, and at the same time, I was still dancing with a lot of these really interesting small companies, companies that were based down in the village, and just sort of very experimental choreography, very much along the lines of like Judson Church kind of stuff, which is totally cool. If anybody is familiar with Judson Church, it was one of these forebears of the modern dance movement, very exploratory, interesting kinds of dance in very offbeat kinds of settings. And it was a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. You know, you've described yourself as a teaching artist, or that's the position that, you know, you currently hold.
Yes.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about that and how you're working in the various communities?
Well, when you're a teaching artist, basically you try to go into public schools, community settings, that type of thing, and you teach the basics and the foundations of dance to kids who might not otherwise get an opportunity to study dance. So you're not doing your traditional sort of dance school, recital, track kind of thing. You're going into public schools. and you get a residency through the agency that you're working with. And in my case, I am a teaching artist for Dance Theater of Harlem, for Arts Westchester, and I'm on the roster of Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. So a school can request a dance teaching artist to come in and do an 8-week residency or a 12-week residency. And the idea, it's very much an arts and education kind of thing. You go into the school and you bring the company's curriculum, which, like in the case of Dance Theater of Harlem, they have this wonderful signature Firebird curriculum that teaches children about the history of Dance Theater of Harlem and the basics of ballet movement. And it is their codified way of teaching the basics of dance. So you bring that curriculum into the school, you find some interesting way to tie it into the learning standards. So you tie it into what they're studying in the classroom. And you do like an 8-week series of classes with them, and at the end you have this culminating performance, which is just fabulous because these kids who may never have danced a step before end up performing. And it is the most, it is just the most wonderful, inspirational thing to see because they get so much out of it and they learn so much. And it's just, for a lot of them, it's a very different way of learning. And it really enriches what they're learning in the classroom. So it's really a great thing.
So do they have to audition to be a part of that program? Is it someone that's already shown an interest in dance, or is it something that you're blanket, it's a blanket program for everyone in the class?
Yeah, it's usually a blanket program. Okay. Like in the case last year, I did a residency at the Oakside School here in Peekskill through Dance Theater of Harlem. I taught the entire 3rd grade. 246 kids learned the Firebird curriculum.
How do you manage that with varying, the varying levels of skill, really? I mean, I'm sure some people are a little more adept to dancing than others.
Well, it's you kind of just find some way of helping them connect to the steps. You don't get really deep into technique per se. It's more about teaching the basics of movement. It's about understanding rhythms and understanding how to connect to steps and how to basically how to travel through space and how to change your levels and change your dynamics and how to feel what you're doing. And you try to use a lot of imagery. You don't use technical names of steps so much as you use images. In the case of the Firebird, you could tell them to move their arms the way the Firebird was moving her wings. Rather than telling them, okay, put your arm in 2nd position. You tell them, okay, you're going to stretch your arms out to the side as far as they'll go, just like the bird spreading her wings. And when you use imagery like that, it really sort of helps the kids to understand what you're looking for and to put it into their own bodies and do it.
Okay, so then within this 8-week time period, you're teaching them the basics and then kind of careening towards the ultimate performance, I guess, which would be the end of your residency at that location.
Exactly.
Okay. So did you, was it an easy transition for you, I guess, from being a professional dancer to teaching? At what point did you decide that you wanted to go into that field?
Well, there almost was no transition because I've always done both. Okay. I've been teaching since I've been teaching movement of one type or another since I was 19 and performing since I was 7. And I've always felt that the two are connected. You go out and you perform, and that's one way of communicating with people. But then when you're in the classroom and in your teaching or in the studio teaching, that's just another form of communication. So, it all sort of, I've never felt like there was a line between the two of them. I always felt like it was all of one piece, which is why, as much as I teach now, I still perform every opportunity I get.
Yes, I can see you doing that. You know, you put it in such simple terms one time when we were talking. You were like, you know, when it's time for me to dance, I just consider it just another, like, I was standing before and now I'm going to be dancing.
Yeah.
It's like seamless for you.
Yeah, it is.
So there was something, I guess you are teaching dance and working with kids with autism. Why don't you tell us a little bit, you know, about that?
I started a program and I ran it for about 3 months just to sort of get a feel for how I wanted to shape it. It was called Moving Voices. And I am actually planning in the new year to restart the program now that I have a really good sense again of how I want to structure it. But basically, Moving Voices is a program for children on the autistic spectrum. And it's not just a dance class. It's not structured exactly like a formal class where you have your, you know, your bar or your warm-up, and then you have your center exercises, and then maybe you'll learn some combinations. It's a little more free-flowing, but basically, I try to reach out to a lot of these schools or community types of agencies that serve children on the autistic spectrum. And I invite the kids to come in, and we use a lot of, again, very structured exercises in the beginning, because a lot of kids with special needs really like structure and routine. But there are also a lot of modifications in the classroom, so you're very careful about not having mirrors on all sides and having the music set at a certain level, because a lot of them have real sensory issues and they don't really like loud music. Or you might want to make sure that the lights are a little dimmer, or you might want to have everyone start in a certain spot on the floor, because that way, when they come, they know that's one thing they can expect. That's their spot.
Right.
And that's where they're going to start. And then when you work with them, a lot of them may be nonverbal. And a lot of them may not necessarily be able to do what you're doing. So you have to sort of allow them a lot of freedom. If one of them needs to just sort of walk around the room in circles for a while, that's what they're doing. But they're in there, they are listening to the music, they are actively participating. It's just that it's taking a different form. And with a lot of them, you know, a lot of kids on the spectrum have a real difficulty with things like eye contact. So you do a lot of exercises where you do mirroring, where you've got two kids doing movements mirroring each other, because it sort of brings them together and allows them to do some eye contact, but at the same time they're also looking at each other's hands or what they're doing with each other's feet, so it's not that constant. And you know, you find ways to modify the experience so that they're comfortable, because again, the point of the program isn't to train them to be professional dancers.
Right.
The point of the program is to aid in things like socialization, which is huge, to aid them in developing their ability to think abstractly or to engage in imaginative play. We do a lot of sort of structured improvisation where you'll give them an idea like, all right, everyone is going to be a different type of tree, and what kind of tree are you going to be, and what kind of fruit do you have, and then when the wind blows, how does your tree move? Something like that. Because again, children on the spectrum sometimes have a hard time with things like imaginative play. For them, everything needs to be sort of concrete.
So do you have, I guess, within the same class, about how many students are we looking at within the class?
I've had as few as 2 in some sessions and as many as 9. You know, you really do, you don't really want to get above 10 kids in a class, because then you're not really able to give each child the amount of attention that they need, and they do need a lot of attention. They need a lot of guiding, especially depending on what their comfort level is or how verbal or nonverbal they are.
Do you try to have them all kind of be on the same level in some sense, or be able to maybe, it's hard for me to, I guess, describe, maybe some may be a little more advanced than others, if you could say it that way?
No, I don't. No, I mean, some of them you would call them being more involved, which means they are less able to interact meaningfully. A lot of them, like I said, some are very nonverbal. Some are very high on the spectrum, which means they are very verbal and are very able to follow instructions and have better coordination. And then some of them, some really cannot do much more than wander around the room maybe, or maybe they need to just be touching things. But again, every child who's in there, they're in there and they are experiencing. Just because they aren't talking to you or even looking at you, they are getting something from the experience of just being there. And sometimes, you know, after a certain amount of time, they will let you guide their movements. They'll let you physically touch them and help them move. And sometimes that's just something that they really can't deal with, and then you have to just kind of let them do what they feel like they need to do.
Right, so you let them pretty much take the lead as far as how much they're going to participate.
Yeah.
That must be very, rewarding for you.
I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I really love it.
So the Synapses Dance Ensemble, how long ago did you get that started?
Let me think. Almost 2 years ago. And it sort of grew out of this idea, again, that I had, that I just feel like the experience of dancing, creating dance, performing it, and being able to get to view dance, it should be something that everyone should get to do, and not just a child whose parents can afford to spend almost $1,000 a year for the lessons and the recital and the costumes and this and that. You know, it's just, that's nice too, but it's not
what you're,
it's not what I'm about. It's not the experience that I enjoy. I actually worked for several studios, and I was part of the whole, now you've got to teach your class a routine, and they're going to do it at the recital, and then you've got the rehearsals, and it was just sort of almost like being in a public school where you're teaching to the test. By January, all of your classes are all about rehearsing for the recital. And I just kind of felt like this is not for me. So I started the ensemble with the idea that I would basically offer dance training and performance opportunities for free to anyone from the community who really felt like they wanted an opportunity to express themselves this way, who wanted to be able to, take part in being a performer, in learning how to express themselves through dance. So it's sort of this interesting collection, because I have people my age who used to dance and always kind of wanted to get back into it, and kind of felt like, well, I'm at a certain age, nobody's going to put me on a stage dancing. And why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they get up on stage and dance? There are people like Carmen de Lavalade, who is, a senior, and she still gets up on stage and dances. And then you have teenagers. I've had kids as young as 9, like my own daughter and her friends in the Girl Scout troop she's in. And I've had people all the way up to age, in their 50s and 60s. And some of them come and they just stay for a while, and then they move on to other things. And I have sort of a small core group of about 7 people who have regularly done all kinds of performances with me. And again, they range in age from about 13, 14 up to, I won't give away my age, but close to 50. And we have a great time together. We really do. We do some really interesting things.
So when you, do you seek out places where you're going to, the whole company could, I guess, audition to be a part of the performance, or are you putting together a performance of your own so that you're...
I've done both.
You've done both? Okay.
Yeah.
So give me an example of some of the things that you've done together.
Well, What usually happens when you have a dance ensemble is that as people in the communities, or people who have a theater, or people who even have a museum or whatever, hear about you, if they're doing some sort of a community gathering, sometimes they'll say, you know, can you come and perform a piece for us? They'll invite you. And then other times you have to sort of go and knock on some doors. And I, you know, working through Arts Westchester as an artist, I've managed to get grants through them where I've been able to go into a variety of venues and perform with kids from the community. So we've performed at the Hudson River Center for Contemporary Art in the gallery. We've performed in the Sculpture Garden out at the Katona Museum. I've performed in the Peekskill Arts Alliance Gallery. I've performed out in the middle of a field at Saunders Farm.
Where is that?
It's in Garrison.
Okay.
And that was part of the collaborative concepts show that they had. They decided this year to have performance art for the first time along with all the visual art. So I spent a day out in a field performing once an hour on the hour, and I mean, you literally had wildlife walking through your performance, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, and of course I've performed at more traditional places like the Paramount Center and SUNY Purchase and Tarrytown Music Hall. I've performed down in New York City a number of times. I even got to perform at Carnegie Hall a couple of times.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, as part of the Newbert Ballet. So, you know, it's been a real mix of these traditional sort of stage experiences, which are always wonderful and lovely. But I have to say, I really gravitate toward the site-specific stuff, the stuff where you're just like in this space and your audience is maybe 5 feet away from you and you're feeding off of them and you're interacting with them, and you know, you never quite know what's going to happen, and it's very cool.
Yeah, you know, I had the, I saw a piece of something that you did at the Contemporary Museum with Ray Blue.
Yeah.
So how did that collaboration come together?
That was due to an Arts Alive grant from Arts Westchester. I got a grant from them, and basically the idea behind my project was this sort of multimedia dance project where I invited a bunch of kids from the Youth Bureau, from the public schools, from the community at large, to come into the studio, learn to do some really, you know, basic dances, and then I brought in a student videographer who made videos of the kids doing their dances. And then a few of them were also available to perform live. So what we did was we got the museum to agree to let me bring some of these kids into the museum, and at the same time that we were showing the videos of them dancing, they were performing their dances live. So it was sort of a multimedia thing.
Oh, nice.
And at a certain point, I don't remember how I heard about Ray. I think because he was doing a fundraiser for his nonprofit. Yes.
Cross-cultural connection.
Yeah, I read about the mission and I thought, yeah, well, this is what he is doing is exactly what I want to do with dance. That same sort of, you know, bringing in youth and giving them an opportunity to develop. And I got in touch with him and I said, I love what you're doing. And I have this grant through Arts Westchester, and as sort of the final element in my final performance, I would love it if you and your students came and performed live at the same time that my students are performing live and the videos are showing. And so that's how it came about.
So
and
the rest is,
yeah.
Well, it came out really, really well.
It was great.
We're kind of running out of time a little bit here, but I wanted to, I know that you have a Snowy Night in Peekskill that you're working on. It's a piece that it's kind of a modern or new take on the traditional Nutcracker.
Exactly.
Why don't you tell us about that really quickly?
Okay. Well, basically, about a year ago, the director of the Paramount had contacted me. She and I had been talking back and forth a little bit. And she had mentioned to me that she would just love to have an original nutcracker that Peekskill would sort of own, you know, to be an original production of the Paramount. So I jumped all over that and started developing this sort of new version of the Nutcracker that's it's loosely based on the Nutcracker tale, but the whole thing takes place in 1940s Peekskill. And the whole second act, instead of the usual Land of the Sweets, the divertissement actually references all of the wonderful companies and industries that were in Peekskill during the 40s. So, like, instead of having candy canes, I had Crayola crayons, because the very first Crayola factory was here.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's a very cool production.
Well, we're going to look forward to that. You can find it, all the information. Give us your website where we can find out more information about this.
It's www.synopsisdance.com.
Okay. I want to thank you for coming. This has been really interesting, and I wish you the best of luck. You know, whatever you have in a performance or anything like that, please contact me, and we'll put it on our website. So thank you for coming. And to the lovely Living Arts in Westchester community, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to visit our website and check out old episodes on our YouTube channel. Have a lovely holiday, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.